All right, so UFC 282 this weekend from Las Vegas, Nevada, in the main event for the light heavyweight championship of the world. Jan Blachowicz taking on Magomed Ankalaev. Obviously, this fight was supposed to be the co-main event. It was probably supposed to be a number one contenders fight or a title eliminator. However, Yuri Prochazka out of his title fighting against Glover Teixeira. Teixeira not willing to take on Magomed on on like 2 weeks notice. So insert Jan Blachowicz into the title fight instead. And yeah, of course, Glover's probably getting the next title shot, considering Yuri's not going to be ready till this time next year. So, you know, the winner of this fight will likely take on Teixeira next, but it just kind of sucks for Glover. He's not getting the title shot right away. Anyways, Blachowicz Ankalaev in the main event, Paddy the Baddy versus Jared Gordon. In the co-main, it should be a good one, folks. If you haven't yet, make sure that subscribe button down below for some more UFC here on the channel. This video was supposed to go out yesterday. I kind of have the flu right now, so that's why this video is going out a day late. But also later today, we'll have our Bellator 289 predictions with Ralphie and Stotts and Danny Sabatello in the main event from Bellator 289 and from Connecticut as well. So honestly, some of these predictions might be a little bit shorter than they usually are, just considering I don't know how long I'm going to be able to talk, just because my voice is kind of messed up and everything. But our first fight of the night will be Stephen Koslow taking on Cameron Saaiman. For Cameron Saaiman, coming off the Contender Series, 6-0 as a pro, and both these guys actually 6-0 coming into this fight. For Saaiman, picked up a win in the Contender Series against Josh Wang Kim. It was a big knockout finish in the third round. He's an underdog going into that fight, and originally for Saaiman, he's supposed to take on Ronnie Lawrence in this fight, or on this fight card. Lawrence withdrew, so now he gets Stephen Koslow on short notice, and he got the Florida native in Koslow coming into this fight, picking up a win in his last one on Combat Night Pro against James Dunn, winning by rear naked choke in the first round. For Koslow, all of his fights have ended in a submission. I mean, he's 6-0 just like Saaiman is, and all 6 of those wins are by submission. He's got an armbar, triangle choke, rear naked choke, Kimura, and then 2 rear nakeds most recently. So yeah, Koslow, again, he is 6-0. He's supposed to take on Martin Day a couple months ago. Obviously, that fight never happened. Day, of course, the former UFC fighter who ended up fighting on Combat Night Pro as well, and lost by a guillotine choke in his last fight. But Koslow, again, undefeated, and really this fight's going to be dependent on where this fight takes place, because if Koslow can get this fight on the ground, I think he's going to be obvious advantage down there. But of course, if Saaiman can keep this fight standing, he's got way more power, he's got way better striking than Koslow. But again, I can say the same thing about Koslow. I think Koslow gets Saaiman down. I think he's going to have a huge advantage down there. I wouldn't say Saiman's completely lost on the ground, but I think just compared to what Koslow can offer, I think Koslow's got a big advantage. But again, when you flip sides, Saaiman obviously way more of an advantage on the feet against Koslow on the other side. So I'm going to be taking Cameron Saaiman in this fight. I liked what I saw in the Contender Series out of him. I mean, it was a really back and forth fight. In that one, he goes in there, he wins the first round, he loses the second. He loses the first round, wins the second, comes back in the third, finds that left hook, puts him on the dot. Knocks out his opponent in that third round. He looked good in that fight. Really showed that he can keep that pace going for 3 rounds. I think he should have enough to beat Koslow in this fight. And considering as well, Koslow is taking this one on short notice, and Saaiman was preparing for a guy in Ronnie Lawrence in this fight. So I think Saaiman wins there's a reason he's a -270 favorite. I'm going to take him by knockout. I'm going to take Saaiman by first round knockout here, because I think if Koslow can't get this fight on the ground, I think Saiman's just going to be able to piece him up on the feet. So I'm going to take Cameron Saaiman to win his UFC debut over Stephen Koslow. I think he's going to get it done with a huge first round knockout to kick off the card in Las Vegas. So we got the UFC debut of Antonio Trocoli. He'll be taking on the former title challenger in Ovince St. Preux. And if you wonder where the Dana White "I love everything about this kid" line comes from, it comes from Antonio Trocoli. That was in the Contender Series 3 years ago. Trocoli comes into his fight in the Contender. He's like a +230 dog in that fight. He comes in there, wins by neck crank in the first round, gets the UFC contract. However, I think that fight was overturned because of a substance abuse problem. So he didn't end up getting his contract at the UFC. He went on to fight one more fight in Brazilian Fight Series last year, and now he's here with the promotion after that one-off fight, I guess, after going in the Contender Series. But Trocoli's back now, finally in the UFC. These guys got a really good ground game. I mean, his punching power it's not bad, but it's really the ground game that does win Trocoli fights. He is on a kind of a big winning streak right now. I guess it's only 3 fights, but still, he was coming off 3 straight losses, fights in LFA or Legacy, and then Jungle Fight afterwards, and he came back, won 3 in a row, including that Contender Series fight. Of course, that got taken away, went back, fought in Brazilian Fight Series, picked up a first round rear naked choke finish, and now he'll be taking on Ovince St. Preux. And for OSP, Trocoli, not his first, opponent that he had on the docket. It's supposed to be Alexander Gustafsson. Gustafsson had a pullout. Then he had Felipe Lins. Lins had a pullout. And now we're stuck on the Trocoli fight. But for OSP, his last fight was a win over Mauricio Shogun Rua. It was a horrible fight, UFC 274 in Arizona, Oliveira Gagey. It's that weird fight where OSP wins. It wasn't impressive by any stretch of the imagination. I thought OSP, though, did enough to get the decision. Anyways, they raise OSP's hand. Bruce Buffer says, Ovince St. Preux, and Shogun pretends like he won the fight. I don't know. I don't understand. Shogun's going to be fighting next month, and I'm not excited. anyways, that was OSP's first win in a couple years, because before that, he lost to Tanner Bozer, got knocked down in the second round there, fighting the Gon Volkov card, and then Jamal Hill put him down in the second round before that. But before the Jamal Hill fight, he knocked out Alonzo Menifield in the second round on the Overeem and Sakai card in Vegas. But OSP, again, back down at 205 pounds. He tried his, share at heavyweight with the Bozer fight. Didn't go his way. He tried at heavyweight again with Ben Rothwell early in the pandemic in 2020. Didn't win either of those fights, losing to Bozer by KO in the second and losing to Rothwell by split decision. But, I mean, when you look at this fight between OSP and Trocoli, obviously, OSP is going to have that Von Flue choke if the fight does end up on the mat, which I think there's a chance this fight will end up down there, because I think that's where Trocoli does want it. And who knows? I mean, again, if Trocoli holds onto a guillotine, who knows? Because how deadly and how nasty OSP is with that Von Flue. But on the feet, stand-up wise, I think St. Preux's the way better striker. I'm not too impressed with the striking game of Trocoli, and I really think this fight does come down to OSP's defensive wrestling and OSP's ability to keep this fight standing. Because if he can keep this fight standing, I think it's all Ovince St. Preux in this fight. I really don't think Trocoli has a chance to put him out or really just outstrike him for 15 minutes. So I think Ovince St. Preux, again, if this fight does remain on the feet, he should be able to go out there, either pick up a knockout or outstrike Trocoli for 15 minutes. If it does go on the ground, I think it does get a little bit more interesting, but I still wouldn't be too, I wouldn't be too fearful of OSP's ground game against Trocoli if the fight does end up down there. So I'm going to be taking OSP in this fight. I don't even think this fight does hit the mat. I think OSP is going to fight off the takedowns, and I think Ovince St. Preux should be able to land that big punch early in this fight. So I'm going to go back-to-back fights with back-to-back first-round knockouts. I don't do this often, but I'm going to be taking OSP to beat Antonio Trocoli by first-round knockout. Now we've got the UFC debut of Raul Rosas Jr., obviously the 17-year-old fighter that fought in the Contender Series. Now he's 18, but when he did fight in the Contender, he beat Mando Gutierrez by unanimous decision, and the man was 17 years old. Rosas was 17 going into that fight. He ends up winning it by unanimous decision, and in that fight for Rosas, he's able to gain a lot of control time on the ground in that fight. He really only needed 3 takedowns in that fight, and he had 12 minutes of control time. It was all Raul Rosas on the ground in that fight, and you feel like the UFC kind of set him up to win that fight, even though Gutierrez is not a bad fighter, his opponent, and Gutierrez was a guy who fought in LFA before. He was fighting in Total Warrior Combat. It wasn't a horrible opponent for Rosas, and he goes in there, weathers the storm, wins by decision. And now for Rosas, he will be getting, if we're being honest, one of the UFC's lower level fighters here at bantamweight in Jay Perrin. Jay Perrin is 0-2 in the promotion. Back-to-back losses to Mario Bautista and to Oreichi Long as well. The Mario Bautista fight, Perrin really just got outstruck for the most part in that fight. He got taken down as well in the third when Bautista was really just trying to seal that fight away. And in the Oreichi Long fight, Perrin had his moments on the feet and had his moments on the ground, but really, Oreichi Long did enough in the first and the second rounds to win that fight 2 rounds to nothing. Or 2 rounds to 1, excuse me. It was the third round, though, out of Jay Perrin. That did look good because Perrin was able to go in there in that third round, secure a takedown, and hold Oreichi Long down. But still, he's 0-2 now in the UFC. They're giving him Raul Rosas. The UFC wants Rosas to win this fight. There's a reason they're giving him a guy who is 0-2 in Perrin, a guy in Perrin who was signed after he did win the CES Bantamweight Championship, after he beat Josh Smith for that title back in 2021. And really, Perrin's ground game and his ability to, fight off submissions and his ability to get submissions in his own right, I think is what's going to make this fight a little bit tough for the 18-year-old in Rosas. I don't think it's going to be an easy walk in the park, per se, where Rosas can go in there, take him down, and find a submission real quick. I don't think Rosas even will get a finish in this fight. Obviously, I still think he's going to win, but I don't think he's going to be able to finish Perrin. Perrin has not been submitted in a while. His last submission loss came all the way back in Bellator in 2017. The main event of that Bellator card, Bellator 178. We've got Pitbull versus Daniel Strauss. Yeah, it's a long time ago when Jay Perrin's last loss came by submission. So I don't think that, for say, Rosas is going to be able to get that. I don't think Rosas is going to be able to get that submission, but I think Rosas will have a lot of success going to the ground game and, finding the takedowns. I think that's going to be huge in this fight. I think Rosas, the pathway for his wrestling should open up in this fight. He is a really good wrestler, and he is really good at keeping top control once he does get it. So I think once Rosas does get Perrin down, I don't know if Perrin is going to be able to get back up. And there's a reason, again, Rosas is a minus 245 favorite. He's 6-0 so far as a professional. I think he will go to 7-0 after this victory over Perrin. Because really, when you look at this at Jay Perrin, how does he win this fight? He's got to prove that he's the better wrestler and the better grappler than Raul Rosas. He's going to have to prove that, okay, he can put Rosas in some spots that is going to, affect Rosas's game plan, or affect the way Rosas, looks in taking him down the next time. I don't think that's going to happen unless Perrin can jump a neck on a guillotine or something. I don't think he's going to have too much success in this fight. I'm going to take Raul Rosas to go in there and win. I don't think he's going to get a finish, but I'm taking Rosas by unanimous decision. So yeah, really surprised the UFC kept Daniel Da Silva around for another one. Usually when the promotion does this and they keep a guy around who is 0-3, they'll book him against a guy coming off the Contender Series that they do really want to push, and they want to come in there to the UFC and pick up a win right away. And that's basically what what they're doing here. I mean, Vinicius Salvador versus Daniel da Silva. I think we know where this is going. For Daniel da Silva, so far in the UFC, 0-3. First fight, it's a loss to Jeff Molina in the second round. Molina sits him down with a big counter right, puts him to sleep. Then after that, he has the fight against Francisco Figueiredo. Figueiredo submits him with a knee bar in the first round. And after that, over in Utah, he loses to Victor Altamirano. Altamirano catches him and eventually finishes him on the ground with ground and pound. Even though Daniel da Silva did find a knockdown early in that fight against Altamirano, but still Altamirano came back and eventually put down da Silva and ended up winning the fight. For Vinicius Salvador, coming off that win in the Contender Series against Shannon Ross, a fighter who is pretty good. I mean, Ross is a really good guy, honestly. And I remember I picked Salvador to win that fight. Salvador's a plus 200 dog going into that one, but he comes in there, finishes Shannon Ross in the second round. And again, Ross is a good fighter who is now signed to the UFC as well. The UFC signed Ross even after the loss to Salvador, where he got finished. He'll be fighting Clayton Rodriguez over in Australia on the Mahasha Volkanovski card in February. But still, for Salvador, my thing with him coming into the Contender is that he was really unproven. He really hadn't fought anybody. I mean, his fight coming into the UFC was against an 0-0 opponent making their professional debut. But still, Salvador has shown that he has got a lot of power on the feet. His striking is really good, and the power, again, for being a fighter who is at 125 pounds, Vinicius Salvador has got pop in his punches. This guy has been really good recently. Of course, the win over Shannon Ross is really telling, I think. But especially when you look at his opponent here, Daniel da Silva, 0-3 in the promotion. He has been caught often and early so far in his UFC career. He's already been knocked down twice in 3 fights. And then for the Francisco Figueiredo fight, Figueiredo rolled to a knee bar and put him down, or didn't put him down, and made him tap. I don't know what da Silva offers in this fight. I think his best path to victory in this fight is if he can get Salvador to get into a back and forth, throwing match with him basically, and just try to, I mean, if you're da Silva, you're hoping you can just land a bomb and sit down Salvador, because really, I don't think he's going to be able to take Salvador down. And then on the feet, again, Salvador is the better striker, but it's just a matter of, okay, maybe da Silva can land that one big bomb and put him down. I doubt that's going to happen. I highly doubt it. I doubt Daniel da Silva, who is 0-3 in the UFC, comes in and beats Vinicius Salvador. And I also want to point out, I mean, he just got, he got finished, da Silva did, just less than 4 months ago. We talked about this a lot with the Tai Tuivasa and Sergey Pavlovich fight, and that was my main reason in picking, Pavlovich in that one was that, yeah, Tuivasa just fought and he just got knocked out. Well, same can be said about Daniel da Silva. I don't feel great about this fight for him. Again, less than 4 months notice, coming in, taking on a power puncher in one of the, flyweight division's biggest power punches in Vinicius Salvador. It doesn't spell a good ending for Daniel da Silva. I'm taking Vinicius Salvador to come in there and pick up a first-round knockout finish. We've got 4 fights, 3 of them by first-round knockout. Give me Salvador again by first-round KO. So the action man is back. Chris Curtis will be taking on Numansa, Joaquin Buckley, and what a fight this is. Chris Curtis coming off his first loss in the UFC to Jack Hermansson, and obviously Hermansson just lost to Roman Dolidze, and Chris Curtis was in Dolidze's corner for that fight. Anyways, he'll be taking on Joaquin Buckley in this one, and this is just a tremendous fight. Because you look at Buckley's last couple of fights, this man has been in some wars recently. Obviously, that fight most notably against Nassourdine Imavov, is a fight that he did lose, but I would say Buckley fought that fight a lot better than I thought he was going to fight it, and Imavov's a guy who's going to be in a main event of a fight night next year, early January, against Kelvin Gastelum. But Buckley was on a 3-fight winning streak before the Imavov fight, beating the likes of Antonio Arroyo. He beat Abdulrazak Alhassan, and then the really entertaining fight against Albert Duraev. Really good fight. He was the underdog in the Duraev fight. He comes in there in San Antonio, wins the fight, and beats Duraev. It was a doctor stoppage at the end of the second round. But you know what Joaquin Buckley is going to bring. You know he's got all that power in the world. And we will see how this fight goes. Because Chris Curtis is a guy who doesn't always engage the action, right? I mean, of course, he said that, Jack Hermansson was kind of running from him in their last fight, which I like Chris Curtis, but I can't really agree with that statement. But for Curtis, there have been some fights where he doesn't really engage as much as he should. Obviously, recently, when you look, I mean, I would say that'd be the Hermansson fight. But we look at the Adolfo Vieira fight, Curtis is really engaging. The Brendan Allen fight too. But even the Phil Hawes fight, yes, he does catch Hawes in the first round, but especially when Curtis does fight some guys who do have some more power than him, then that is something to look out for. I don't think it's going to be too much of a problem here, because I think Buckley will bring it to Curtis. And of course, Curtis, that was basically a nice way of saying Chris Curtis is a counterpuncher, because that's what he is, right? So if Buckley is bringing it to Curtis, Curtis should be able to throw right back. And I think that's kind of the thing we saw in the main event last week with Wonderboy Thompson and Kevin Holland. People like to call Wonderboy boring. Well, it's just that's the kind of fight Wonderboy usually fights, and he's a very technical striker. But if you get into Wonderboy's face, like Tyron Woodley did in their first fight, not the second fight, but in the first fight, and like what Kevin Holland just did last night, right? That's the fight you're going to get out of Wonderboy, because he's going to be forced to throw back at you, and you are going to see how good his striking is. And I think to a similar extent, that's the same with the action man, Chris Curtis. Buckley's a guy who's not going to wait. Buckley's going to go for it. That's what he does in every single one of his fights, especially when Buckley thinks he's he's got more power than his opponent. And don't get me wrong, Curtis has got a crap ton of power as well, but Buckley should have a slight power advantage in this fight. He throws very hard, but for Buckley, though, I would be concerned about this fight for him. If he goes for it early in the first round, if he just, empties the gas early, Curtis is going to take over in that second and the third round if Buckley just tries to go for the big knockout in the first round, which is something I could definitely see happening. Of course, big pay-per-view spot for Buckley, even though he's been, on fight nights with crowds recently. This is his first pay-per-view in a while, and I think it's going to be Buckley's first pay-per-view with the crowd, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it is. So we'll see how that does affect things. But again, I think Buckley's going to go for it early, and I think Curtis is going to get out of the way of those big power shots that Buckley will throw. And I think that's going to open up the offense a lot more for Curtis, because I think as we get into the second and the third round of this fight, if it does get there, I think Buckley's going to be, overthrowing a lot. He's going to be swinging big, and then Curtis will just be able to catch him coming on the way in. So I do think Chris Curtis is going to win this fight. I'm going to take the action man to beat Joaquin Buckley by knockout in this one. Again, I think it's going to be similar to kind of the Phil Hawes fight, where I think, early Buckley's going to really go for it. He's going to look good against Curtis, but as we get into I'm going to say in the second round, Buckley's going to overthrow, Curtis is going to catch him with something, and the action man, Chris Curtis, is going to put down Joaquin Buckley. So I'm going to take Chris Curtis to get back on the winning track in this fight. I think he's going to beat Joaquin Buckley, and I think we'll get it done by second round knockout. Now we've got a heavyweight fight between Jairzinho Biggie Boy Rozenstruik and Chris Daukaus, and honestly, for Chris Daukaus, I think the UFC pushed Daukaus way too early, and I think they tried to elevate him to the Tom Aspinall level way too soon, and I think, honestly, I bought into the Chris Daukaus hype as well. I'm not going to lie to you. I picked him to beat Derek Lewis. It didn't happen, obviously, right? But I think Daukaus was elevated way too quickly. And now when we look back at his wins, they're Parker Porter. Is Porter still in the UFC? I don't think so. No. Oh, wow. He's fighting Justin Tafa. Okay. Well, he's still in the UFC, but he's fighting Justin Tafa in Australia in a couple months, right? Then he beats Rodrigo Nascimento. Now, that was Nascimento's first loss, but Nascimento, just came off the win over Tanner Boser, but still not a top 15 level heavyweight. And then Daukaus beat Alexei Oleinik. Alexei Oleinik's kind of washed, let's be honest. And then after that, for Daukaus, he beat Shamilo Durakimov, a guy who's 40 years old. Durakimov just lost to Sergey Pavlovich, and he'll be fighting Jairton Almeida next year in Brazil. He is going to get smashed, brother. And then after that, for Daukaus, of course, he's given the Derek Lewis fight. He loses, he gets knocked down the first round, and they have him go fight Curtis Blades like 3 months later in Columbus, Ohio, and Blades puts him out and knocks him out in the second round. And now here we are with Daukaus 9 months later. He'll be taking on Biggie Boy Jairzinho Rozenstruik, and I don't think Daukaus is a bad fighter. I don't think he is. I think he's a top 15 level heavyweight, but man, for the third fight in a row, they are giving Daukaus a guy who is ranked ahead of him in the rankings. And I feel like in a spot like this, they should give Chris Daukaus a guy like, I don't know, Marcus Rodrigo de Lima, or give him a Blagoy Ivanov. Give him a guy like that, because now again we are giving him Jairzinho Rozenstruik, a guy that is higher than him in the rankings. And in all likeliness, I think Biggie Boy is going to win this fight. Now, for Rozenstruik, it's been a mixed bag since he called out Francis Ngannou, which again, all the credit in the world of the man for calling out Ngannou. But after the Ngannou fight, he gets knocked out, of course, in 20 seconds. It was Ngannou's windmill technique. Then Biggie Boy, 3 months later, comes in there, beats JDS, loses to Cito Gun after that, beats Augusto Sakai, then back-to-back losses to Curtis Blades, where he lost by unanimous decision over in Vegas at UFC 266, and then the Volkov lost in the main event on a fight night just 6 months ago, losing by knockout in the first round. Now Biggie Boy's back against Chris Daukaus, and yes, Rozenstruik sometimes does, have trouble with the elite of the weight class, but Chris Daukaus is not the elite of the weight class. I'm just sorry, he's not. Rozenstruik's got more power, he's a better striker, and he's the all-around better kickboxer. Rozenstruik throws kicks, Daukaus really doesn't. Daukaus is kind of just stuck just throwing his hands, and for Rozenstruik, he will throw kicks, he will offer a lot more than what Daukaus is going to offer him, and I just think, all around striking wise, Rozenstruik's a lot better. So that's what I'm going to be taking Biggie Boy to win this fight. Again, I just don't like that they're giving Daukaus yet another guy that is higher than him in the rankings, because it just feels like, again, we keep on pushing this guy, and now if he loses to Rozenstruik, he's going to be on a 3-fight losing streak, and it's kind of like the Dominic Reyes effect, right? Well, it's like, okay, what do you do to him now? Because he'll be knocked down in all 3 of these fights, because let's be honest, if Daukaus loses this fight, he's going to get knocked out, because Biggie Boy really doesn't win fights, in any other way. So I'm going to take Rozenstruik to win. I think he's got more power. I think he's the all-around better kickboxer. And again, I think Rozenstruik's kicks are going to come into play a lot in this fight as well. But it should be the big winging shots out of Rozenstruik that's able to put down Chris Daukaus. I'm going to take Biggie Boy to beat Chris Daukaus in this fight. I think he'll win, get back on the winning track. Give me Rozenstruik to win this one by first round KO over Daukaus. So Eric Silva is a very old addition, I guess, to the UFC's roster. They signed the man in the Contender Series at the age of 35 years old, something the UFC doesn't really do all that much. And he, his finally contender was an interesting one. He's taking on a kickboxer in Asvar Bozanarov. I don't know. This guy, he's a Uzbekistani. He's an Uzbekistanian kickboxer or Muay Thai fighter and kickboxer, I guess. And, they put him in an MMA fight against Eric Silva, against a guy in Silva who is a primary grappler and a guy who is going to go into fights shooting takedowns right off the bat. And that's what he did in this fight against Bazaranov. I mean, he goes in there, takedown immediately, and his opponent has no clue what's going on the ground. Silva ends up just beating the crap out of him on the ground, winning by TKO, winning by ground and pound in the first. For Silva in this fight, though, he'll be taking on TJ Downtown Brown. For Brown, 2-3 so far in the UFC as he comes into the promotion, losing to Jordan Griffin in his first fight. Then he drops the next one to Danny Chavez. So he's 0-2 in the promotion, comes back and beats Kai Kamaka in a very close fight, in a very, questionable fight. I thought Kamaka won, but it's fine. After that, Brown comes in. He dominates Charles Rosa on the ground. It's the Charles Rosa effect. When he's not the better grappler, he loses. TJ Brown was the better grappler, so he won. And then after that, Brown took on my guy, Shailan Nordembeka. And Nordembeka went in there and won that fight by decision, 2-1. Anyways, Silva versus Brown now. For Brown, I mean, he's going to have to try to keep this fight standing. And now, is TJ Brown the best stand-up fighter? He's not, but if he's going to want to beat Eric Silva, that's probably how he's going to have this fight go. Because I think Silva's got a very clear advantage on the ground. He's, that's where basically he takes all of his fights. And, if Brown's going to want to have a chance of winning this fight, he's going to have to keep it standing. Silva coming in this fight, minus 145 for Brown, plus 125. The Tapology votes really don't reflect those odds. A lot of people going with Silva in this fight for good reason, I guess, considering, again, Brown has lost 2 out of 5 so far, or 3 out of 5 so far in the UFC, and a lot of people think he has lost 4 because of the Kamaka fight, which I get. But this fight just comes down to if TJ Brown can stuff the takedown or not. Because when you look at Brown's previous fights in the UFC, Shailan Nordembeka took him down 3 times. Danny Chavez took him down 4 times. But Brown, in his own right, isn't a bad wrestler either. I mean, hell, even the fight that he lost to Jordan Griffin, he was winning the fight until Griffin caught him in the guillotine choke in Norfolk, Virginia in 2020. Brown took down Griffin 7 times in that fight. In the Brown-Rosa fight, Downtown Brown took him down 6 times, right? So really, this fight is dependent on one thing and one thing only. It's who the better grappler is and who the better wrestler is, really. Because whoever the better wrestler is in this fight is going to have the advantage in terms of top control and pressure. And really, that's where I think this fight goes. So it just depends really who the better wrestler is. I'm going to take Eric Silva. I think Silva is that better wrestler and is that better grappler. So I think he will go into this fight. I think he will beat TJ Brown. I think it's it's a really close fight either way. But I'm going to take Eric Silva to go in here, win his first fight in the UFC, and I think he'll get it done by decision. I don't think he's going to be able to get the finish against Brown, but I'm still going to be taking Eric King Silva to win his UFC debut by unanimous decision. So next up, we've got Billy Quarantillo taking on Alexander Hernandez. And for Billy Quarantillo, it's his first fight back since that absolute war against Shane Burgos over at Madison Square Garden, UFC 268 last November. And for Quarantillo, again, he was booked against Bill Algeo just a couple months ago. Fight never happened because Quarantillo had to withdraw, but that fight between Quarantillo and Burgos was an absolute barn burner. I mean, what a fight that was in the main card, and that fight would be regarded as one of the better fights of last year if it wasn't for it having to follow up Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler. Literally maybe the greatest fight in UFC history Quarantillo and Burgos had to follow. And you look at the numbers from this fight, I mean, significant strikes total, 193 to 164 in favor of Burgos. Total strikes, 232 to 196 in favor of Burgos as well. Now, Quarantillo really tried to get this fight on the ground at multiple points in this fight. He just couldn't get it down there because Burgos was able to stuff a lot of the takedowns. Because Billy Q does win that first round, but the second and third, Burgos really starts to take over, and the output out of Burgos really starts to get turned up on that end. And really, though, for Burgos, he was the more precise striker. He's a more accurate striker as well in this fight. But you look at Quarantillo's takedown attempts, over 14, 10 of those coming in the third round, going over 10 in that third round, desperately trying to get that fight on the ground. But for Billy Q before that, he had that win over Gabriel Benitez, beating Benitez by third round TKO. Really good win for him. As a back and forth fight like most Billy Q fights are, but it was again more of Quarantillo working his wrestling and getting the fight down on the ground, and then the third again ended up finishing that fight by TKO on the ground. Before that, for Billy Q, lost to Gavin Tucker, and by the way, where is Gavin Tucker? This guy loses to Dan Ige, gets knocked down the first round. We haven't seen him since. He's been booked twice against Pat Sabatini. He's drawn from both of those fights. I mean, I don't know where Billy Q is, I don't know where Gavin Tucker is, but he beat Billy Q back in 2020. Before that, for Quarantillo, back-to-back wins starting his UFC career, beating Jacob Kilburn by triangle choke in the second round, his first fight, beating Spike Carlisle after that by unanimous decision, and then finishing Kyle Nelson by third round KO in their fight in 2020 as well. Now, for Billy Q's opponent in this fight, we've got Alexander Hernandez, who really, for Hernandez, he has not beat a UFC caliber fighter in a while. Well, okay, that's going a little bit tough on Chris Gruetzemacher. He has not beat a guy that is on his level in a while. There, that's fair. Because honest to God, I keep looking back at Hernandez's record. His last really impressive win to me is Olivier Aubin-Mercier, now the current PFL world champion and good for OAM. He beat Stevie Ray. He is the lightweight champion now in the Professional Fighters League. But for Hernandez, I would really say that's his last good win, was back in 2018. We look at what Hernandez's body of work has been since that fight. He gets finished by Cowboy Cerrone in Brooklyn in January of 2019. He barely beats Francisco Trinaldo in a fight that he got outstruck in. It was boring, but still, they gave him the nod on the scorecards. I don't understand it, but it's fine. He loses to Drew Dober after that. He beats Chris Gruetzemacher, which is a good win, but let's be honest, Alexander Hernandez is supposed to knock out Chris Gruetzemacher in the first round. And after that, for Hernandez, he loses to Thiago Moises. He beats Mike Breeden by knockout in the first round, but what is Hernandez supposed to do to Mike Breeden? Exactly that. Hell, Natan Levy beat Mike Breeden. And then after that, for Hernandez, he got submitted over in Houston, UFC 271, and that's when Mike Cano got him by second round submission. I don't really know if Hernandez is that guy anymore, honest to God. He went on a pretty good run in 2018, but let's be real still, this guy has not been that same guy since Cowboy head kicked him and finished him back in 2019. Hernandez still has not been that same fighter. He has not beat a UFC fighter that is on his level, and Billy Quarantillo in this fight is on his level, but I think Quarantillo is going to really bring it to Hernandez. He is going to get into Hernandez's face, and he's just going to offer a lot of strikes in his, in that direction, because I don't think Billy Q is really going to be taking down Hernandez, because Hernandez's, wrestling defense is pretty solid, so I think you're just going to see a striking match, and if we get somewhat similar to the Billy Q we got in the Burgos fight, he is going to piece up Hernandez for 15 minutes. I'm taking Billy Q to win this fight. I think, again, he is going to piece up Hernandez for 15 minutes. Give me Quarantillo to win this one by unanimous decision. So I hate to say it, but this is a loser gets cut fight. I mean, that's really what it is. We've got Edmen Shahbazyan taking on Dalcha Lungiambula, two guys who are on 3-fight losing streaks in their own respective rights here. And the loser of this fight will probably get cut. Maybe not Shahbazyan. They might keep him around just considering he is so young. They probably wouldn't want to get rid of him just yet. And they probably give him, I don't know, an Ike Villanueva or something. Oh, wait, no, wrong weight class. But still, they probably give him, someone who's really not on his level. But really, let's be honest with ourselves. Dalcha Lungiambula is not on Edmen Shahbazyan's level. He's not. Not at all. I would take Edmen Shahbazyan against all the guys Lungiambula's lost to in his 3-fight losing streak. And, those guys are Marc-Andre Barriault, Cody Brundage, Punahele Soriano. I'd take Shahbazyan against all three of those guys. The UFC knows what they're doing booking Shahbazyan versus Lungiambula here. They know what they're doing. Lungiambula's wins in the UFC, he's got 2 of them. They're Marcus Perez, who's no longer in the UFC, and they're Jaquan Townsend, no longer in the UFC. He's only beat guys who are out of the promotion, and his losses, he lost to Magomed Ankalaev, who's going to be fighting in the main event. But other than Ankalaev, Marc-Andre Barriault, Cody Brundage, Punahele Soriano aren't bad fighters, but they're not on the level of Shahbazyan. Shahbazyan still, say what you want about him, he's still a top 20 guy, even though his last 3 losses are just incredibly tough fights. When you look at it, hell, the guy was 22 years old. They put him in the main event because he beat Brad Tavares, which still is a big win, the big knockout win in MSG UFC 244 against Brad Tavares. When they book him against Derek Brunson, he loses the fight. Okay, Brunson was just a little bit too much, too early and too soon for Shahbazyan, and then they're like, all right, go fight Jack Hermansson. And yes, Hermansson just lost to Roman Dolidze in an incredible finish for Dolidze, catching him in a calf slicer and then finishing him with back control. Crazy out of Dolidze. I mean, something that I haven't seen ever before in MMA, and that's a rare thing to say, really. It's rare when you see something new in MMA. And, Roman Dolidze pulled that against the Joker in Orlando. But anyways, Hermansson beats Shahbazyan like he's supposed to. And then they say, okay, Shahbazyan can go fight Nasruddin Imavov. Last year in Madison Square Garden, Covington Usman 2. Imavov goes in there, catches him, gets him in the crucifix. Shahbazyan's got nowhere to go. Imavov wins the fight. They did not do Shahbazyan they did not do him any favors in booking those last 3 fights. They tried to propel him up in the weight class with the Brunson fight. Didn't go his way, and they give him Hermansson and Imavov. Those are tough fights. And now they're giving him Dalcha Lungiambula, a guy who is on a 3-fight losing streak. Marc-Andre Barriault struck him for 3 rounds. Lungiambula was looking good against Brundage until he wasn't, until Brundage caught him in a guillotine. And the Puna Soriano fight, Soriano puts down Lungiambula in the 2nd round. again, I think Shahbazyan is the better striker. I think Shahbazyan will be able to put down Lungiambula pretty early here. I'm just not too impressed with Lungiambula. And honestly, too, Shahbazyan's going to be way bigger than Lungiambula in this fight, too. Shahbazyan's 6'2", Lungiambula's 5'8". There is going to be a huge height discrepancy in this fight, and Shahbazyan should be able to land early and often on Dalcha, and he should be able to put him down and knock him out. So this is the fight that Edmen Shahbazyan gets back on the winning tracks. He's going to go out there. He is going to beat Dalcha Lungiambula, and he's going to get it done in the first round. So Shahbazyan back in the win column with the first round knockout win over Dalcha. So someone's has got to go. We've got a battle of the undefeated Bryce Mitchell taking on Ilia Topuria. For Mitchell, 15-0, 6-0 in the UFC. For Topuria, 12-0 professionally, 4-0 in the UFC. What a fight this is. This was originally scheduled to be, actually no, that was Bryce Mitchell versus Movsar Evloev was originally scheduled to be a main event of a fight night. Now Topuria takes this one instead of Evloev. What a damn fight this is. Because it's a clash of styles too. Like, you know what Bryce Mitchell's going to offer. Mitchell's going to offer the wrestling. He is going to offer the thug jitsu. He's thug nasty for a reason. He's going to try to get the fight on the ground. He's going to try to grapple with you. But for Ilia Topuria, this is a guy who has never been taken down so far in the UFC. This is a guy who's got a 100% takedown defense rate so far in the promotion, and who's got nasty striking, and he's nasty once he gets down to the ground as well. You look at his last fight too. I mean, you look at the win over Jai Herbert. He flatlines Herbert. He puts him out in the second round. He puts him to sleep in London. What a win for Topuria. And it was a fight where Topuria had to come back and he had to deal with some adversity. Now, this is a fight for Ilia where he's like a minus 600 favorite. He still beats Jai Herbert, and it's a good win for him, but man, Herbert earlier in the fight does put down Topuria, does knock him down, but Topuria regains himself, he regathers himself, and eventually he'll knock out Herbert and win by second round knockout. Now, his fight before that, he beats Ryan Hall. Ryan Hall's a guy nobody wants to fight, and Topuria went in there. He, doesn't play the game with Ryan Hall. He doesn't, engage in any of his Iminaris. And Ilia Topuria goes in there and knocks him out in the first round as well. And the Topuria before that beats Damon Jackson, knocks him out in the first, and then has a decision win his UFC debut over Youssef Zalal. At the time, really taking all of the momentum away from Youssef Zalal, considering he was undefeated at the time in the UFC, or at least I think he was 3-0 in 2020 at that point. But Topuria goes in there, weathers the storm, takes down Zalal at will, and wins a decision. For Bryce Mitchell, again, coming off the win over Edson Barbosa in his last fight, he knocks down Barbosa too in that fight, which was interesting. He put down Barbosa, I believe it was in the first round, and in the second and third, it is all Bryce Mitchell just wrestling Edson Barbosa. Barbosa not being able to get back up to his feet. Again, thug nasty, doing his damn thing. Same thing we said about the Andre Fili fight, Charles Rosa, where he almost gets him in a twister. The Matt Sales fight, he did get the twister. It's just that's what Bryce Mitchell's going to do. Mitchell's going to take you down. He's going to put you in weird spots on the ground, and he's going to try to submit you. But I don't know if he's going to be able to take down Topuria in this fight. And that's where I struggle picking Bryce Mitchell. Because Mitchell will shoot a lot, and he'll be successful in a lot of them. Like, he was 4 for 4 against Barbosa. His fight before that against Fili, he was 7 for 13. The Rosa fight, he was 3 for 3. He's successful a lot. But again, nobody's taken down Topuria just yet. And Ilia Topuria is very physically strong. Topuria is a guy who is very good off his back as well, and a guy who can fight from his back as well. And it just makes it tough on Bryce Mitchell, I think. Like, really, stylistically, I think it's a tough fight for Mitchell, because I think Topuria should be able to fight back in a lot of these weird spots Mitchell's going to put him in. And I think on the feet, it's one-sided. Like, yeah, Mitchell does have, his striking is getting better, but he's still a very, He's still a very one-dimensional on the feet. He's still very basic on the feet, I think, and Topuria should be able to light him up while the fight is contested up there. Now, obviously, for Thug Nasty, he's going to try to take this fight down, but I just don't know if Topuria is going to allow him to get the fight in the ground. And if he does, I think Topuria should be able to pop back up to his feet. So I'm going to take Ilia Topuria in this fight, man. I think Topuria, again, is able to fight off the wrestling out of Bryce Mitchell, and I think he's going to win this fight by knockout. I'm taking Ilia Topuria by second round knockout. I think this fight's very similar to the Ryan Hall fight, where you see Bryce Mitchell kind of just a sitting duck after he can't get a takedown. Now, obviously, not to the same certain extent as it was with the Ryan Hall fight, because obviously Mitchell's stand-up game is better than Ryan Hall's, but I think once Mitchell can't get the takedown, Topuria is going to have his way on the feet. I'm taking Ilia Topuria to remain undefeated in this fight. He's the favorite in this one. I'm going to be taking him. I think Topuria improves to 13-0 professionally, 5-0 as a pro. Ilia Topuria puts down Bryce Mitchell in the second round and TKOs him. Topuria with the biggest win of his career, second round TKO finish over Thug Nasty Bryce Mitchell. What a fight now here at the middleweight division. We have got Dricus du Plessis taking on Darren Till. It is du Plessis' toughest fight to date, and he'll be taking on a guy in Darren Till who has not won since UFC 244 in 2019. The last time Darren Till won, the BMF championship wasn't even fought for just yet. And given, is the BMF title a very stupid thing? Yes, it is. The stuff Masvidal's saying right now about, oh, I wouldn't fight Michael Chandler because he's not a BMF. You know, Jorge Masvidal keeps on getting more annoying by the day on his takes with Chandler, Burns, and all these guys. It's ridiculous. Anyway, Masvidal doesn't want to fight anybody. Hopefully he fights Wonder Boy. That's what I'm hoping for. But anyways, Darren Till's last win comes on that Masvidal and Diaz card, and he beats Kelvin Gastelum barely by split decision. But when you look at it for Darren Till, in his last 5 fights, he is 1-4, and it's a split win over Gastelum. His other fights, it's a loss to Tyron Woodley for the championship. Woodley gets him in the Darce. Masvidal knocks him out. Whitaker beats him by decision, and Derek Brunson most recently submits him in the 3rd round in a main event. And you can make the case, and I will remain on this stance that Wonder Boy beat Darren Till back in 2018. I do not give the scorecards on that fight. I still think Wonder Boy won. Was it the most entertaining fight? No, it wasn't. When you look at the fight, when you look at that fight and you rewatch that fight, okay, you give the first round to Wonder Boy, you give the second round to Darren Till, you give rounds 3 and 4 to Wonder Boy, round 5's Darren Till. That fight's 3-2 Wonder Boy. It's not a great fight. It's a great fight because the crowd is so involved in it, but I still think Wonder Boy wins that fight. So if you take that into account, all right, Darren Till has not seen that much success recently. He has not. And now he's going to be taking on an up-and-comer Dricus du Plessis, who seems like he's a lot older than he actually is. He's only 28 years old. I mean, same can be said about Till. Till's only 29. But du Plessis, man, undefeated so far in the UFC, 3-0. It's a knockout win over Marcus Perez. It's a knockout win over Trevin Giles, and it's a huge decision win over Brad Tavares. A back-and-forth fight, one of the better fights on that UFC 276 card. Tavares and du Plessis just trade back and forth. Du Plessis eats a lot of big shots, but he still wins the fight after a massive 3rd round. And now du Plessis gets Darren Till. And Dricus has got a solid ground game as well. If he is able to get the takedown, he's really good down there too. And that's a spot where Darren Till has struggled a lot in his career. Brunson took him down at will. Robert Whitaker was able to take him down, given not for all that long, but still, Gastelum wasn't really able to take him down, but still, guys are able to take down Darren Till. Dricus du Plessis, if he needs it, might be able to do the same exact thing. And once du Plessis does get on the ground, his jiu-jitsu and his whole grappling game as a whole is pretty solid. But pure stand-up wise, I know Darren Till's got the hands. I know Till is quick up there. But still, I do like the game at du Plessis a lot. Again, this is a guy, Darren Till, who's, doesn't really fight that often. He's booked for a lot of fights, doesn't really fight on a lot of those dates, and now he gets du Plessis, man. It's a tough fight for the gorilla here. It really is. I'm taking Dricus du Plessis here. I've taken du Plessis in every single fight so far he's had in the UFC, but I think du Plessis is able to go in there, and I think he's able to put down Darren Till, and I think he's able to knock him out, which is kind of a crazy statement because, again, the only guy to ever do that is Jorge Masvidal, but I think du Plessis is going to catch him on the chin. I don't feel great about Darren Till at this point of his career, and I feel like this is a crossroads fight. I think Till's going downwards, and I think du Plessis is only going up. Truly, I think Dricus du Plessis is a guy who we will see in the top 5 of this weight class by this time next year, and I think he's able to go in there, land a big right on Darren Till, and put him down, and put him to sleep. I'm taking Dricus du Plessis, and I know I'm taking a lot of finishes on this card, but I'm going to take yet another one right here. I'm taking the South African-born fighter in Dricus du Plessis to remain undefeated in the UFC. He'll be 4-0 with a first-round knockout finish. Actually, no. Give me a second-round knockout finish for du Plessis because du Plessis does take a little bit to get going. I'm going to take a second-round knockout finish for Dricus du Plessis over the gorilla, Darren Till. Man, why are they doing this to Robbie Lawler? I mean, this is ridiculous. Why? Like, there's so many fights Lawler can have that are legends fights, like the Nick Diaz fight. And we're booking him against Santiago Ponzinibbio, who again is a guy in Ponzinibbio who's likely never fighting for a world championship at this point of his career. But still, Robbie's 40 years old. Ponzinibbio's still truly a top 15 guy. I don't understand what they're doing here. Like, Robbie just lost to Brian Barberena, and we're giving him Ponzinibbio now? Oh my God. I don't think Robbie's got the knockout power anymore. I don't think Robbie's got the hands anymore to put away a guy like Ponzinibbio. I don't like this. I don't like it at all. Man, I mean, okay, the Robbie fight against Barberena, he doesn't start all that bad. Like, he's losing, but he's staying in the fight in the second round, though. Barberena kind of melts him towards the end. Robbie gets tired, and it's just like, Lawler's not the same fighter he used to be. He hasn't been that same fighter, really. I mean, since the Askren fight, since the Colby fight, really, that fight where really Colby demoralized Robbie. And then after that, Lawler lost to Neil Magny, he beat Nick Diaz, and he lost to Brian Barberena. I don't like that. I think this is going to be Robbie Lawler's last fight in the UFC. I hope it's not, because I hope they give him a fight against another legend, against a guy like, okay, I know, Cowboy's retired now, but like, they should have done Robbie Lawler versus Cowboy Cerrone. Both of them retire. Like, that should have been the fight. I hope they give Robbie Lawler like a Joe Lozon in his next fight. Like, honestly, God, because Lozon never ended up getting to fight Cowboy. I think that should be the next fight for Lawler. Because I'll be straight up honest with you. I'm going to talk about Santiago Ponzinibbio in a second here. But Ponzinibbio is going to knock out Robbie Lawler in the first round. I don't think this one's going to last very long. I feel, it pains me to say, but this is going to be a type of fight where it's like Chris Gutierrez versus Frankie Edgar. I think it is. It might take a little bit longer to develop because Robbie still can kind of take a punch a little bit, but I just don't think Robbie's able to offer up much back in return. I think Robbie, if he does get in a back and forth fight with Ponzinibbio like he did against Barberena, he is going to get tired and he's going to wear early in this fight. But there's a reason Ponzinibbio is at minus 380 and Lawler's plus 310, right? But I just wish Lawler, they'd give him a guy like Joe Lozon because, like, he's not fighting for a championship anymore. He shouldn't be fighting the guys like Ponzinibbio. And I just hope he doesn't get cut after this. I hope they give him one more fight. I hope they give him time to regroup, give him like the summer of next year, put him on a pay-per-view card against Joe Lozon, have it open the card. Lawler will be 41 by then, and maybe he can go in there and get a highlight reel Robbie Lawler knockout finish, and in a fight where both him and Lozon can retire. Now for Ponzinibbio, it's not like he's, some killer right now. He has lost 3 of his last 4. The losses coming to Michel Pereira, Jeff Neal, and Li Jingliang. But he's got the big win over Miguel Baeza. It's a really good fight. Back and forth war on the feet. One of the better fights of 2021. But even in the losses Ponzinibbio's had, he's had back-to-back really close fights against Pereira and Jeff Neal. He has shown that he can still go. He has shown that he can go for 15 minutes. He's shown that he can throw back and forth, and he can still get into these firefights in the feet. He took a lot of damage from Baeza. He took a lot of damage from Jeff Neal. He took a lot of damage against Pereira. But he's been fine in those fights. Now, Li Jingliang kind of ran the button, which is fine. But still, that's what I'm saying. In Ponzinibbio's latest run in the UFC, he is 1-3. But he's still... It pains me to say, he still levels ahead of Robbie Lawler at this point. He just is. He just is, man. Ponzinibbio is going to come in there. He's going to knock out Robbie in the first. It pains me to say. It really does, because I like Robbie Lawler. I grew up watching Robbie Lawler, but he's not that same ruthless Robbie Lawler he once was. And again, I hate the matchmaking here because it makes no sense, and the UFC is just really setting Robbie Lawler up for failure in this fight. It's kind of weird. They're making you pay for a 40-year-old Robbie Lawler on a main card of the UFC pay-per-view. Wild to me. Still, though, I'm taking Ponzinibbio all day long. He might not be the best Ponzinibbio we've ever seen, but he's still got the power. He can still trade back and forth with Lawler, and I don't think Lawler's going to be able to respond similar to what happened in the Barberena fight with Ponzinibbio if Ponzinibbio just keeps on exchanging back and forth with him. Give me Santiago Ponzinibbio to beat Robbie Lawler. He's going to get it done by first round knockout. So it is absolutely crazy that Paddy the Baddy is in a co-main event of a UFC pay-per-view in his 4th fight. And now, I've been on the record saying that I don't think Paddy the Baddy's the greatest. I think he's a little overhyped. I think he's a little overrated. But still, I will not, I'm not going to question how good he is because he is a good fighter. And the Jordan Levitt fight showed that to me. Okay, Pimblett is good. But I picked Paddy in every single fight he's been in the UFC. I've just had my doubts. I thought there was a chance Levitt was going to win that fight. He didn't, but that was a really good test to pass in that fight. I mean, it was a good win for Paddy the Baddy. You look at his win so far in the UFC. His first fight's the win over Luigi Venturini. Now it's a fight where Venturini rocks him back. And again, is Luigi a guy who's still killing it in the UFC? Yeah, he hasn't fought since the Paddy fight. After that, Pimblett beats Kazula Vargas, and Kazula Vargas hasn't fought as well in the UFC. After that, he's 1-3 in the promotion. And then he beats Jordan Levitt. And Levitt, again, is by far his toughest opponent to date. Levitt's going to be fighting Victor Martinez next year. And again, Levitt's a guy with real UFC wins. He's 3-2 in the promotion. He's a good fighter. I like the Monkey King a lot. But for Pimblett, one real win in the UFC so far, and it's a step up now. Jared Gordon, to the casual fan and the casual eye, this is going to be the first time a lot of people are going to be seeing Jared Gordon, but this is a good fighter who is 7-4 in the UFC. He's fought the likes of Charles Oliveira before, and he's been fighting pretty well. He won 4 of his last 5 at this point. It's a win over Chris Fishgold. Since the pandemic, it's a win over Fishgold. It's a win over Danny Chavez. It's a win over Joe Selecki. A loss to Grant Dawson, which is a fight I'm going to get back to in a second. And then a win over Leo Santos just a couple months ago in Salt Lake City at UFC 278. For Gordon here, the game plan, I think, is pretty simple. I mean, I think he's gonna try to get after Paddy the Baddy on the feet. Because on the ground, I don't think Gordon really wants none of Paddy, because Paddy is going to have the advantage down there. By far, he'll have the advantage. Grant Dawson, I think Grant Dawson is a better wrestler than Paddy Pimblett, but if Grant Dawson is able to take down Jared Gordon 7 times, Paddy the Baddy's going to find at least one takedown. And then once Paddy does get Gordon down, okay, it's going to open up a lot more for Paddy the Baddy than what Grant Dawson has. Because Grant Dawson, good ground fighter for sure, but his jiu-jitsu and his way, him finding submissions isn't as great as what Paddy can offer. And it really, Dawson's pressure isn't what Paddy's pressure is going to be on the ground. But on the feet, right, we've seen Pimblett get wobbled before. The Venturini fight's huge because, again, Venturini's a guy who has not fought in the UFC since. Gordon will be in your face and Gordon will strike with you. You look at the Leo Santos fight, he outstrikes Leo Santos 203-41 in that fight. It's not close. Like, those guys are not even fighting the same sport at this point, right? Gordon goes after him. He boxes up Leonardo Santos, and Leo Santos is a guy who, he's a jiu-jitsu guy, given he's 42 years old at this point, but he's a jiu-jitsu guy, and if you can keep him standing, you're going to get the best of him. That's kind of similar to what I think Gordon and Pimblett can be. However, Paddy the Baddy's stand-up game is way better than Leo Santos' striking game is. Paddy's got power on the feet, and that's undeniable. It's just Paddy striking, he leaves his head wide open. Like, he leaves it, square in the air, ready to get hit. That's the problem with Paddy on the feet. He does have good punching power, he does have good strikes, but Paddy is very susceptible to getting hit on the feet, and hit a lot. Again, that's where Venderimni wobbled him. And Gordon isn't the guy who's got the most punching power, and that's why I think they booked Gordon against Paddy, because I don't think the UFC thinks, and I don't think Paddy the Baddy thinks, that Jared Gordon can knock him out on the feet. And if that's not the case, and even if Gordon's not able to really put real damage onto Paddy Pimblett, then Paddy's just able to stay on the feet, keep his head wide open in the air, and keep on throwing big power shots until eventually he knocks out Jared Gordon. And really, I think Paddy's got multiple ways to win in this fight, and for Jared Gordon, I think he's kind of got one. It's if he does land that big power shot. And if Gordon does win his first fight in the UFC by knockout. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Paddy's going to get this fight down, though. I think Pimblett's going to take him down, and I really only think it takes one out of Pimblett in this fight. I think it's going to be a huge fight. Of course, Pimblett's first time fighting in the U.S. for the UFC. He's in Vegas, T-Mobile Arena, co-main event of a pay-per-view. The crowd's going to be rocking. They're going to be doing the Oh Paddy the Baddy chant. And I think Pimblett goes in there, and I think he'll submit Jared Gordon in the first round. It's a huge victory to get the crowd going. Paddy the Baddy wins. First round sub over Jared Gordon. Main event time for the light heavyweight championship. We have got the former champ in Jan Blachowicz taking on Magomed Ankalaev. What a fight we have got here, of course, for the light heavyweight championship. Now, we talked about it earlier. It was supposed to be Yuri Prochazka versus Glover Teixeira, the rematch. Of course, Yuri's out the fight, and now we have Jan and Magomed Ankalaev. For Magomed, currently in the UFC, 9-1, his only loss being his first fight in the promotion, where he lost to Paul Craig with the second left back in 2018. He lost by triangle choke in the third round in London, England. But other than that, for Ankalaev, it's been 9 straight wins for him. You've got a win over Marcin Prokhnio by knockout, a decision win over Kilton Abreu, a front kick knockout win over Dalcha Lungiambula, knockout against Ian Kutelaba, another knockout against Ian Kutelaba, decision win over Nikita Kirillov, a decision win against Volkan Oezdemir, and a decision win against Thiago Santos in the main event, and then most recently beating Anthony Smith in the second round. It was a fight where Ankalaev just kind of had his way with Anthony Smith, got him to the ground, eventually finished him with a TKO finish down there. I mean, he really chewed up the legs of Anthony Smith in that fight too. But Magomed is now back, and he's going to be taking on Jan Blachowicz here. And I'm interested to see how Ankalaev approaches this fight. Because if he strikes with Jan, I think there's a very good chance he wins. But I'm curious to see if Ankalaev does try to shoot for the takedowns. Because, Magomed does have the wrestling, but really, he's not... okay, he doesn't try the same Dagestani camp, obviously, but he's not like one of those typical Russian high-level UFC fighters, right? They're mostly, for the most part, these guys are really good wrestlers, so they're just going to grind you out on the ground. Magomed Ankalaev's not that type of guy. He's more of a stand-up fighter. Now, he does have the wrestling, but really the last time Magomed has scored more than one takedown in a fight was the Nikita Kirillov win all the way back in February of 2021. Other than that, it's been the striking out of Magomed. I mean, that's what it was against Thiago Santos in the main event. That's what it was against Volkan Oezdemir. And Ankalaev has seen a lot of success on the feet, even though, yeah, Thiago did knock him down in their main event fight in the second round. And I think that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for Jan Blachowicz too. But I think we got to take into account also, Jan Blachowicz is pretty old. He's 39 years old. Like, Jan is, we talk about Glover Teixeira being at the end of his career, because he is. He's like, 42, 43. But like, Jan's getting to that point too. Blachowicz really took off late in his career. He didn't have his big rise really until he was 36, when he beat Luke Rockhold. Then he beat Jacare, then he beat Corey Anderson, then Dominic Reyes, and of course the rest is history with Adesanya, Teixeira, then Rakic, right? But like, Jan is getting up there in age too, but it's undeniable that he's still got the power. I mean, the Polish power is still there for Blachowicz. But like, when you look at his last fight against Alexander Rakic, it was a fight that I thought he was losing. I thought he was losing the fight against Rakic. He wins the first round. Second round, he's getting beat up. Third round, kind of nothing much happening until, Rakic's leg breaks, and then Jan wins the fight, right? I thought at the time, I mean, the way that fight was going, everyone thought that Blachowicz was probably on his way to losing that fight. I thought Rakic had, found something in the wrestling that if he could keep going to that well, he could probably go out there, tire Jan Blachowicz, have his way on the feet once they bounce back up there, and Rakic could go win the fight that way. Obviously, though, the fight didn't go that way, and now Blachowicz is in the spot against Magomed Ankalaev. When you break this fight down, though, I think Ankalaev's the better striker. I think he is. I think Blachowicz, sure, he has the power, and if this fight is going to end by knockout, it will likely be a Jan Blachowicz knockout, right? If Blachowicz wins, it will likely be by knockout. I don't think he wins a decision, right? But if Ankalaev wins, it'll probably be a decision. I don't think Ankalaev is going to put away Jan. I just don't think that's going to happen. You know, if he does, it's going to be like a late 4th or 5th round knockout or TKO finish for Magomed, right? When you look at the wrestling, I don't think it's going to play too much of a... I don't know. It might. Okay, it might. If Magomed takes down Jan early, I think he's going to go back that well a lot. Considering like how Rakic was able to take him down in the second round, if Magomed's able to do the same thing, I think Ankalaev might keep going to it. Something that we don't see often out of Ankalaev, right? But still, it's a title fight. It's a championship fight where he doesn't want to take too much risks. And if he finds something that works, he's going to keep going back to it. I don't know if that's going to be all the way there, though, because Jan's takedown defense is actually pretty good. It really is. Like, I know he's just fought some really good wrestlers in the past or recently and jiu-jitsu players in Glover Teixeira and then Rakic after, right? But, you know, Jan's been fighting some good guys. Ankalaev sure is on that level too, but if Jan's able to stuff a couple takedowns early in this fight, I think Ankalaev will just, you know, key in more on his striking and just try to have that striking fight with Blachowicz. And if that does happen, again, the Polish power is still there. Like Jan will have a chance to win the fight on the feet. He is going to have the opportunity to knock out Magomed Ankalaev. I just don't know how much he's going to be able to touch Ankalaev once the fight is standing. I don't know how much he's going to be able to do so. Because I think Magomed, again, uses his kicks pretty well. He keeps distance pretty well. I don't know if Jan's able to close the gap. And I don't know if Blachowicz is able to, you know, get off those big power shots and put down Magomed. Obviously, Thiago Santos put down Ankalaev before, but that's shown that, okay, Magomed Ankalaev can come back, deal with adversity, and come back and win the fight, right? If Jan's going to put him down, he's going to have to put him away. Because I think even if he, you know, gets that, you know, glimmer of hope where he knocks him down once, Magomed can get back up to his feet, he can recover, and he can win the fight that way. And again, I just don't see a way where Jan Blachowicz wins 3 rounds in the feet against Magomed Ankalaev. I don't think it's possible, but I really think Jan is really dependent on the knockout here. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to, you know, I'm going to be cheering for Jan Blachowicz in this fight. I want to see Jan get the championship back at 39 years of age, but I'm making picks here. And I'm not picking against Magomed Ankalaev. I haven't picked against Magomed just yet, and I'm not going to do it right here. I think Ankalaev is going to beat Jan Blachowicz, and I think he's going to win 4 rounds out of 5. I think Jan is going to knock him down. I think we are going to get something similar to where Thiago Santos, you know, quickly knocked down Ankalaev, and Ankalaev worked back to his feet. I think you are going to get a moment like that. I think Blachowicz will get very close to winning this fight, but I do think Magomed is going to show that he can deal with that adversity, work back up, and stay in the fight that way. I think Jan's going to knock him down either in the first or second round, but I think after those first 2 rounds are over, Ankalaev's going to win 3, 4, or 5. At the very least, he'll win 3 rounds. I still think he's going to win 4, but I definitely think Jan's got a chance. I think Jan's got a chance, but I'm not picking against the minus 240 favorite in this fight in Magomed Ankalaev. I think Ankalaev's going to win. He's going to become the new world champion. Obviously, that's what the UFC wants. The UFC wants Ankalaev to win, as they were trying to do Teixeira versus Ankalaev before they put Blachowicz in this spot. And obviously, the next fight from here, the winner of this fight will be fighting Glover Teixeira. Obviously, Blachowicz is the much more favorable matchup for the former champion in Glover, but I think it's going to be Magomed, barring some thrilling knockout finish from Poland's own and Jan Blachowicz. So we're taking Magomed Ankalaev to be the new light heavyweight champion in the world. I got Ankalaev at 30 years of age to win the light heavyweight strap, and he'll get it done by unanimous decision. If not by late decision, it'll be by a late knockout, but I'm going to go decision safe pick. So folks, thank you all for watching our UFC 282 full card predictions video. Make sure to check the channel out later tonight for our Danny Sabatella versus Raufeon Stotts Bellator 289 predictions. Also Patchy Mix, and we've got Magomedov on that card as well, and also the flyweight championship between Liz Carmouche and Juliana Velasquez, the rematch of their fight in Hawaii. So make sure you go check out that video coming out later tonight as well, and we'll be back next week for the final UFC card of the year. In the main event, Jared Cannonier taking on Sean Strickland in the middleweight division. So folks, thank you all for watching. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more, and Mamba forever.